Number 9 is the decision diet. This is the most exhausting cognitive trap in human history. The human brain is essentially a biological battery powered by glucose. Every single choice you make drains a tiny bit of that precious voltage. I will be placing you inside a standard corporate morning routine. Your alarm goes off at 6 in the morning and the assault begins. You stare into a chaotic closet, trying to pick a shirt for 30 minutes. You spend another 10 minutes debating whether to eat oatmeal or a bagel. You frantically calculate the fastest driving route to avoid morning traffic. By the time you sit at your miserable desk in central London, your cognitive battery is already entirely depleted. Before 9 in the morning, you are essentially a walking zombie, operating on pure impulsive instinct. You start making terrible financial decisions because your prefrontal cortex is exhausted. You agree to terrible business deals because you just want the meeting to end. That was a terrible decision, and your financial life completely implodes. Let's try that again. With an aggressively restricted billionaire wardrobe, you wake up and put on the exact same gray t-shirt as yesterday. You eat the exact same bowl of plain oatmeal without a single thought. You take the exact same train route without looking at a map. Congratulations, you survived the morning with your mental battery at 100%. But let's say you now have to negotiate a hostile corporate takeover. Your brain is hyper-focused and ready to absolutely destroy the competition. But your daily reality feels like a sterile, monotonous prison of your own making. You have optimized yourself into a cold, calculating robotic state of existence. You no longer experience the joy of spontaneity or human surprise. You just process data and execute commands until your biological clock stops. Honestly, that is a pretty chill experience compared to this next psychological weapon. Number 8 is strategic silence. This is the most suffocating auditory weapon ever devised by human beings. The human brain is hardwired to absolutely despise awkward social silences. When a conversation stops, your amygdala registers it as a physical threat. I will be placing you inside a high-stakes salary negotiation room. You just asked your boss for a $20,000 raise. Your boss looks you dead in the eyes and says absolutely nothing. 5 seconds pass, and the silence becomes thick enough to choke on. Your heart rate spikes, and your palms start sweating profusely under the table. 10 seconds pass, and your brain goes into a full-blown panic state. You feel an overwhelming, desperate need to fill the empty void of sound. You start rambling uncontrollably and negotiating against your own best interests. You nervously laugh and offer to take a much lower salary instead. That was a terrible decision, and your career trajectory instantly implodes. Let's try that again, with a sociopathic level of emotional detachment. You state your price, and you completely lock your jaw shut. You stare at the other person with dead, unblinking shark eyes. You force them to sit in the unbearable vacuum of their own discomfort. Congratulations, you survived the negotiation and got exactly what you wanted. But let's say you bring this psychological weapon back to your own house. You start using strategic silence against your friends and your own family. You watch them squirm and panic while you sit there like a stone statue. You realize that you are actively terrorizing the people who actually love you. Your relationships slowly disintegrate because nobody trusts a person who weaponizes silence. You win every single argument, but you end up completely alone in a massive house. Honestly, that isolated nightmare is a pretty chill experience compared to this. Number 7 is the inversion method. This is the most pessimistic survival strategy ever programmed into a human mind. Instead of trying to be brilliant, you obsessively focus on not being an idiot. You spend all your time identifying the specific actions that guarantee total failure. I will be placing you inside a massive tech startup on launch day. You are the lead developer, and you want to build the perfect application. You spend months adding flashy features and complex animations to the software. You are so focused on success that you completely ignore the core security flaws. The moment the app goes live, foreign hackers immediately breach the database. They steal millions of user passwords and drain the company bank accounts. Your investors are screaming at you, while federal agents raid your office building. That was a terrible decision, and your entire professional life completely implodes. Let's try that again with the paranoid framework of the inversion method. You sit down and ask yourself how to guarantee this startup fails miserably. You realize that bad security and awful customer service are the fastest routes to death. You violently strip away all the flashy features and focus entirely on a bulletproof firewall. Congratulations, you survived the launch, and your company is technically completely safe. But let's say you apply this dark, inverse logic to your entire waking life. You stop trying to find happiness and only focus on avoiding total misery. You refuse to travel because airplanes can experience catastrophic engine failure. You refuse to fall in love love, because relationships can end in bitter divorces. You build an impenetrable fortress around your life to keep out the pain, but you realize that a perfectly safe fortress is exactly the same as a prison cell. You survive until old age, but you never actually lived a single day. Number 6 is the time asymmetry. This is the most aggressive distortion of mathematics you will ever experience. Average people treat their money like gold and their time like absolute dirt. The elite reverse this completely by placing a psychotic price tag on every single second. I will be placing you inside a standard weekend at your suburban house. You have a leaky pipe under your kitchen sink that is rapidly flooding your hardwood floors. You decide to save $50 by watching 3 hours of plumbing tutorials on YouTube. You spend another 2 hours driving through gridlock traffic to buy specific copper wrenches. You spend 4 agonizing hours covered in dirty, freezing water trying to tighten the pipes. You technically saved $50 on a repair bill, but you just burned 9 hours. 9 hours of your finite, rapidly vanishing human life that you can never get back. That was a terrible decision, and your weekend is completely destroyed by a cheap pipe. Let's try that again with the financial cheat code of the time asymmetry. You immediately pay a professional emergency plumber $200 to fix the sink. You spend those exact same 9 hours building a highly profitable online digital business. Congratulations, you survived the plumbing disaster and actually made $10,000 instead. But let's say you apply this ruthless, calculating time value to your personal relationships. You start charging your friends an hourly consulting rate just to listen to their emotional problems. You outsource playing with your own children to a highly paid, professional educational nanny. You have perfectly optimized your earning potential to an absolute maximum mathematical peak. But you eventually realize that you have commodified your entire existence into a sterile spreadsheet. Honestly, that hollow victory is a pretty chill experience compared to this. Number 5 is the sleep weapon. This is the most misunderstood biological glitch in modern corporate warfare. Hustle culture brainwashes people into thinking sleep deprivation is a twisted badge of honor. But exhaustion physically shrinks your prefrontal cortex and turns you into an impulsive, frightened animal. I will be placing you inside an 80-hour work week on a Wall Street trading floor. You are drinking your 6th cup of black, bitter coffee just to keep your eyes open. You are currently managing a $300 million investment portfolio for a very angry client. Your brain is swimming in a toxic soup of cortisol, adrenaline, and extreme cellular fatigue. You see a minor dip in the tech market, and your exhausted amygdala triggers a primal panic. You frantically slam your keyboard and sell off every single asset at an absolute massive loss. That was a terrible decision, and your entire financial career instantly implodes. Let's try that again with a mandatory 8 hours of deep cognitive armor. You sleep in a perfectly dark room, set to exactly 65 degrees every single night. You wake up with your brain chemistry perfectly balanced and ready to hunt for opportunities. You watch the exact same market dip and logically recognize it as a massive buying opportunity. Congratulations, you survived the market crash and made your clients incredibly wealthy. But let's say you take this biological obsession to an absolute extreme paranoid level. You begin tracking your REM cycles with invasive biometric headbands every single night. You refuse to attend evening social events because they might slightly disrupt your circadian rhythm. You become completely isolated from human society just to maintain your perfect daily sleep score. Your bed becomes a highly optimized medical pod that strictly dictates your entire life. Honestly, that sterile hibernation is a pretty chill experience compared to this. Number 4 is the human leverage glitch. This is the most parasitic method of absorbing intelligence ever documented in history. Average people try to learn how to do every single difficult task entirely by themselves. The elite completely bypass the brutal learning curve by essentially purchasing the brains of other people. I will be placing you inside a massive legal battle against a ruthless multinational corporation. You decide to represent yourself in federal court because you desperately want to save money. You spend 6 grueling months reading complex, dusty legal textbooks in your dark basement. You show up to the courtroom completely exhausted and entirely out of your intellectual depth. The corporate lawyers absolutely destroy your flimsy arguments in less than 5 humiliating minutes. That was a terrible decision, and you are immediately hit with $1 million penalty. Let's try that again with the ruthless efficiency of the human leverage glitch. Instead of asking how to win the lawsuit, you ask who has already won it. You hire the most vicious, bloodthirsty defense attorney in the entire state of New York. You hand them a massive blank check and go back to sleeping peacefully in your mansion. Congratulations, you survived the legal slaughter and destroyed the corporation without lifting a finger. But let's say you apply this extreme psychological outsourcing to your own personal identity. You hire anonymous ghostwriters to write your heartfelt anniversary speeches for your spouse. You pay professional personal shoppers to strictly select every single piece of clothing you wear. You hire fitness models to tell you exactly how to move your physical body every morning. You eventually look in the mirror and realize you do not possess a single original skill. You are just an empty, wealthy vessel that permanently rents the personalities of other people. Number 3 is the rejection immunity. This is the most masochistic psychological rewiring ever attempted by human beings. Average people are biologically terrified of the word no because ancient tribal rejection meant starving to death. The elite actively hunt for rejection to completely destroy this natural human fear response. I will be placing you inside a high-end investment pitch meeting. You are standing in front of 5 billionaires asking for $1 million. They look at your business plan and brutally laugh directly in your face. Your biological programming triggers an immediate rush of shame and hot panic. You stumble over your words and immediately run out of the glass boardroom. You spend the next 5 years completely paralyzed by the fear of failure. That was a terrible decision, and your potential empire completely implodes before it even begins. Let's try that again. With a perfectly numbed, rejection-proof nervous system, you walk into the same room and demand the exact same $1 million. They laugh in your face and tell you the idea is absolutely pathetic. You just smile brightly because your brain registers their insult as a meaningless data point. You immediately walk next door and pitch the exact same idea to another room of billionaires. You collect 100 painful rejections until the word no literally loses all emotional weight. Congratulations, you survived the gauntlet and eventually found the one person willing to write the check. But let's say you apply this aggressive immunity to your normal personal life. You start asking for ridiculous discounts at normal grocery stores just to feel the rush of rejection. You become an absolute nightmare to interact with because social norms no longer apply to you. Honestly, that obnoxious reality is a pretty chill experience compared to this. Number 2 is the willpower bypass. This is the most manipulative form of self-imprisonment ever designed for productivity. Average people rely on fragile human willpower to achieve their long-term financial goals. The elite realize that human motivation is garbage, so they aggressively manipulate their physical surroundings instead. I will be placing you inside a standard modern apartment with a massive television. You come home from a brutal 10-hour shift at a warehouse. You tell yourself that you are going to study coding for 3 hours tonight. But the television remote is sitting perfectly centered on your soft coffee table. The kitchen cabinets are absolutely stuffed with highly addictive processed sugar snacks. Your exhausted brain physically cannot resist the path of least biological resistance. You eat an entire bag of chips and watch 7 episodes of a meaningless sitcom. That was a terrible decision, and you wake up completely broke and miserable again. Let's try that again. By violently restructuring your entire physical environment, you literally rip the television off the wall and throw it in the actual garbage. You install a timed padlock on your internet router that shuts off all entertainment websites. You empty your kitchen cabinets and only stock raw vegetables and black coffee. You are literally trapping yourself inside a perfectly designed productivity prison cell. Your brain gives up trying to find cheap dopamine because the environment makes it impossible. Congratulations, you survived the night and built a wildly successful software company out of pure boredom. But let's say you apply this dictatorial control to every room you enter. You refuse to visit your friends because their houses are full of tempting distractions. You sit alone in a sterile, white room, doing nothing but optimizing your workflow. Honestly, that lonely white room is a pretty chill experience compared to this final nightmare. Number 1 is the chess glitch. This is the most terrifyingly calculated psychological weapon in the elite arsenal. Normal people only look at the immediate, first-order consequence of any action. The elite run complex mental simulations to see the hidden domino effect of the 5th and 6th orders. I will be placing you inside a massive electronics store during a holiday sale. You see a giant 70-inch television marked down by $500. Your primitive brain screams that this is an absolutely incredible financial victory. You swipe your credit card and drag the massive box into your small living room. But you did not calculate the second-order consequences of this massive glowing screen. You start staying up until 3 in the morning, watching terrible action movies. Your chronic sleep deprivation causes you to make a massive mistake at your corporate job. You are immediately fired and cannot pay the credit card bill for the television. That was a terrible decision, and your financial life completely implodes over a plastic screen. Let's try that again with the paranoid calculation of a second-order thinker. You look at the television and ask yourself what happens after you plug it in. You trace the invisible timeline and realize it will destroy your morning routine. You immediately turn around and invest that $500 into a high-yield index fund. You calculate that this boring investment will compound into a massive fortune over 20 years. Congratulations, you survived the consumer trap and eventually bought the entire electronics store. But let's say you apply this obsessive foresight to every single breath you take. You physically cannot enjoy a warm cup of coffee without calculating the long-term caffeine crash. You cannot hug your family without calculating the statistical probability of future emotional heartbreak. You have successfully conquered reality, but you are trapped in a permanent, terrifying simulation of the future. Honestly, we are completely exhausted by all this intense psychological manipulation. We despise these paranoid billionaires, and we just want to go to sleep. Do not try to hack your own brain, because it will probably destroy your life. We are logging off right now to stare at a blank wall in peace.